Can you imagine a world without superheroes? In 2024, we certainly can't. Whether you call yourself a fan of this popular cinematic genre or not, the superhero genre is a big thing nowadays. Of course, what we have today are modern explorations, but we often tend to forget that superhero flicks have been around for a very long time now. And that brings us to the crux of today's video, where we will specifically be looking at the period of the 80s. The 80s might not have been the golden decade for superhero movies, but there's no denying that this particular period was home to a string of some very critically acclaimed and commercially acclaimed superhero movies. Well, here's a look at 15 of the best superhero films of the 80s, which are bound to bring back some fond memories. Are you ready? Let's dive right into the video then. But before we get to the list, we do have a very small request. If you enjoy the content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means an awful lot. Thank you. Now, let's begin. Batman, 1989. Tim Burton's Batman continues to have a massive fan following to this day, with fans loving Burton's crowning cinematic achievement to death. Backed by a powerful screenplay by Sam Hamm and Warren Scarron, this film serves as the first installment of Warner Bros. Batman franchise, and it's only fitting to address this as a superhero movie unlike any other. The events of this film take place early in the Caped Crusaders' war on crime, as he's seen encountering the sadistic, sociopathic Jack Napier, who becomes his arch-nemesis, the homicidal Joker. Undoubtedly one of the biggest critical and financial hits of the 80s, Burton's Batman became a recipient of the Academy Award for Best Direction. Now, it shouldn't come as a surprise when we tell you that several A-list actors such as Mel Gibson, Harrison Ford, Dennis Quaid, and even Pierce Brosnan were considered to portray the titular character before Michael Keaton bagged the role. Keaton was a controversial choice, and many doubted he would do justice to the character, but then again, these were all prior to the flick's release, and with Batman hitting the theaters, the rest, as you all know, is history. Jack Nicholson, who essayed the role of the maniacal crown prince of crime to the utmost perfection, may we add, even received a Golden Globe nomination for his brilliant performance. In fact, the very success of this particular movie left a huge legacy over the modern perception of the superhero film genre, spawning 3 sequels in the process and inspiring both the design and tone of the groundbreaking superhero show, Batman, the Animated Series.
Murphy.
RoboCop, 1987. Paul Verhoeven's futuristic superhero movie starring Peter Weller in the titular role is set in a crime-ridden Detroit and has police officer Alex Murphy getting murdered by a criminal gang while on duty. Murphy is subsequently revived as the heavily armored cyborg law enforcer RoboCop without even an ounce of memory of his former life by the megacorporation OCP, intended to serve the public trust, uphold the law, and protect the innocent. However, with RoboCop, in due course, becoming aware of the megacorporation's sinister, sickening plans, he turns on his creators. Written by Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner, RoboCop is packed with the wildest of villains and some of the best action sequences, all set against the backdrop of the dystopic, crime-infested city of Detroit. Needless to say that with RoboCop, the Dutch filmmaker has whipped up what can be fittingly addressed as a classic sci-fi, one that is blended with just the right amount of action and social satire. Verhoeven has paid attention to every character on display, giving each the depth that they require in the first place. For example, Murphy's transformation into RoboCop features highly realistic and impressive practical effects. In fact, it was Rob Bottin who was responsible for leading the special effects team in creating the practical effects, the RoboCop costume, and dare we disregard the violent gore? Agreed, RoboCop is a violent flick, but it's also one that's so cartoonish that you can't take the violence on display seriously, despite the movie featuring criminals getting maimed, mutilated, and melted.
Games. You want games? I'll give you games.
Tron, 1982. Written and directed by Steven Lisberger, the narrative of Tron has Kevin Flynn, a computer programmer, video game developer, and hacker, transported into a digital world where he's made to participate in deadly gladiatorial games. Kevin's only chance of survival, escaping from the game grid and returning to the real world, is via Tron, a self-governing security measure. Steven Lisberger's Tron is nothing short of breathtaking, and the movie is one of the earliest films to use extensive CGI. Having said that, it is also true that the flick was disqualified from receiving an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects because the Academy back in 1982 didn't recognize resorting to computer animation as genuine. The Academy believed it was cheating, completely missing the flick's whole point. However, there was no stopping Tron from eventually emerging as a cult movie with massive following, despite the film initially getting panned by critics for its incoherent storyline. The critics, however, were super impressed by actor Jeff Bridges as Kevin Flynn. Add to this the graphical content, top-rate design, spectacular SFX, and the breathtakingly beautiful computer animation, and you've got a classic on your hands. Sadly, Tron was a commercial failure upon release, but you can't deny the fact that it was the computer animation that certainly made Tron way ahead of its time. Also, Tron spawned multiple arcade video games, all of which emerged as tremendous hits, thereby outgrossing the movie that they were based on in the first place. Flash Gordon, 1980. Mike Hodges' space opera superhero movie is based on cartoonist and illustrator Alex Raymond's comic strip for King Features Syndicate. The film has football star Flash Gordon, travel agent Dale Arden, and former NASA scientist Dr. Hans Zarkov drawn to the planet Mongo, which is ruled by the tyrannical emperor Ming the Merciless. Ming is hell-bent on destroying Earth for his own personal amusement, and with Flash realizing that his planet is in mortal danger, the latter makes up his mind to unite the warring factions of Mongo and prevent Ming from wiping out Earth. Written by Lorenzo Semple Jr., Flash Gordon is a campy extravaganza, one that's irresistibly entertaining and as 80s as it can possibly get. First things first, you're not supposed to take this movie seriously. It comes under the category of a guilty pleasure, and it's jam-packed with hokey comedy, spectacular visuals, luxurious sets, vibrant costumes, and an unforgettable musical score by British rock band Queen and English composer Howard Blake. The absurdity and cheesiness of this film are pretty much intentional, and our advice to those who haven't seen Flash Gordon yet and wish to have an enjoyable experience is not to hold the crumminess and ridiculousness of the flick against it. The movie might have failed at the box office, given that it didn't really sit well with the viewers back when it was released, but today, Flash Gordon is a cult classic, and there's no denying that. Superman 2, 1980. Richard Lester's Superman 2, which is a direct continuation of the Christopher Reeve Superman 1, has Reeve reprising the titular role once again. Widely regarded as one of the best sequels of all time, this superhero film is an engaging and entertaining take on the Man of Steel. Backed by a screenplay by Mario Puzo and couple David and Leslie Newman, Superman 2 remains a classic to this day with a storyline that has Superman declaring his love for Lois and sacrificing his superpowers so as to lead a normal life with her. However, it's around this time when Kryptonian criminals General Zod, Ursa, and Non arrive on Earth after getting accidentally released from the Phantom Zone, thanks to the shockwave of a hydrogen bomb that was thrown from Earth by Superman. With the criminals joining forces with Lex Luthor in the process and aiming at world domination, it's up to Superman to take matters back into his own hands. Very few films have the power to match up to the level of its predecessor's success, and Superman 2 categorically falls on that list. To those of you wondering what the high points of the movie are, they are conclusively the villains on display. Terrence Stamp as the ruthless, arrogant, and megalomaniacal General Zod, Sarah Douglas as Zod's second-in-command and consort Ursa, and Jack O'Halloran as the 7-foot-tall, formidable hulking mute Non. Superman 2 is filled with some incredible action sequences, spectacular special effects, great pacing, John Williams' iconic theme music, Ken Thorne's grand musical score, an elegant narrative design, and let's not disregard the depth of the characterization. Every character, for that matter, has great lines that are lovingly put together and not just thrown together for the sake of it. Credits to Richard Lester here, who made sure that there wasn't any need to establish an origin story and that the director could simply lead his audience to the direction of the main plot. The acting by Reeves is also top-notch. No wonder he continues to remain the fan-favorite Superman of countless fans after his death. Masters of the Universe, 1987. The 80s were a period where one could actually make a movie about anything and from anything. Well, if we're to put stress on the latter, Gary Goddard actually came up with his fantasy film based on Mattel's Masters of the Universe franchise. The intriguing plot has the evil warlord Skeletor taking over Castle Grayskull and imprisoning the Sorceress of Grayskull in the hopes of draining the Sorceress's powers and seizing control of the whole universe. Of course, Skeletor is confronted by his arch-enemy He-Man, who came along with his companions to free the Sorceress. However, the mighty warrior and his friends are forced to flee from the castle, resorting to the Thenorian locksmith Gwildor's creation, which happens to be a cosmic key that is capable of opening a portal anywhere. This leads He-Man and his comrades to Earth, and the key is lost upon their arrival. After learning Skeletor requires the key for his plans of global conquest, He-Man and his companions start looking for it, unaware that the key has not only been discovered by two California teenagers, but that they have also unknowingly transmitted a signal that has the villainous Skeletor and his minions all geared up and ready to retrieve the key from Earth, turning it into a battleground. First things first, what you're looking at happens to be the only live-action film in the Masters of the Universe franchise. This movie, despite being a box office dud both critically and commercially, achieved its due cult film status. Hats off to Goddard for being able to do what he could with the budget he was provided to work with. Goddard has given a somewhat stylized approach to the superhero genre while remaining fairly faithful to its source material. The USP of this movie here has to be the characters on display. Frank Langella as Skeletor, James Tolkien as Detective Hy Lubick, and Meg Foster as the sublimely wicked Evil Lyn. As far as Dolph Lundgren is concerned, he looked the part, which also meant that he pulled off the role with his flowing blonde hair, hypnotizing blue eyes, and dare we disregard that Herculean physique. That said, probably a good thing that Lundgren's dialogue was kept to a minimum. We would also like to add here that Langella was the most appropriate choice for Skeletor. He not only brought the character of Skeletor to life, but also gave us faith in his conviction that Skeletor is perhaps one of the greatest villains ever imagined. One doesn't have to be a die-hard fan of the series to enjoy the movie. Masters of the Universe is highly imaginative and entertaining, and it's bound to bring back some of your fondest childhood memories.
Move it very close up! Get it close up!
I got it!
Keep getting it!
The Punisher, 1989. Before Thomas Jane and John Bernthal portrayed the infamous anti-hero, it was again Dolph Lundgren who starred as the Punisher back in the 1980s. Directed by Mark Goldblatt and written by Boaz Yakin, this vigilante action thriller movie has ex-undercover police detective and U.S. Marine Frank Castle becoming the city's most wanted, mysterious vigilante assassin known as the Punisher, after his wife and two daughters are killed by criminals. Of course, the 1989 film is a lot different than the Thomas Jane starring 2004 flick. To begin with, Goldblatt's film is violent, moody, much darker, and faithful to the comic book it's based on. The action sequences are without a doubt the movie's high points, and as per reports, Lundgren did most of his own stunts. The body count in this movie is ridiculously high, so much so that the character of Castle is credited with slaughtering 125 people even before the movie starts. This should be enough to keep gorehounds and fans of the comic character super happy. Now, speaking of Lundgren, he is excellent as the Punisher. The man has the look and his voice is fantastic. Lundgren also breathes more life into his character, and one can figure out that he, after the death of his family, is really suffering. Yakin's screenplay does give the character of Castle some depth, and it almost takes you into his dark, dank world. The Punisher is average as a movie, but if you look at it as a comic adaptation, it's kind of fantastic. The Toxic Avenger, 1984. Believe us when we tell you Michael Herz and Lloyd Kaufman's superhero black comedy splatter film is impossible to forget. The Toxic Avenger has Melvin Junko, a 98-pound janitor who's working at a health club, getting harassed and bullied by a group of mean-spirited customers on an everyday basis. When one of the pranks leads Melvin to fall into an open vat of toxic waste, he's transformed into a hideously deformed mutant, possessing superhuman strength and size. Fair to say, this is how Melvin becomes the monstrous new hero, or in other words, the Toxic Avenger, and as a result, he makes up his mind to protect his town against crime and get even with his past tormentors. Herz and Kaufman's The Toxic Avenger offers a humorous take on the superhero genre, deliberately taking elements from popular film slashers of the time in order to make a midnight movie sensation right upon release. The movie is packed with tons of gore. Arms are getting severed, eyes are ripped out of their sockets, heads are being crushed, and guts are torn out. Technically, these scenes are atrociously violent, but they're all laughed off at the end of the day, as is kind of Kaufman's style. Imagine villains being evil enough to run kids over for fun, but when you see the scene, you'll end up rolling on the floor laughing. You really just have to see it to understand what we're trying to say here. The Toxic Avenger also has the perfect pacing, and there isn't a single dull moment throughout the runtime of 82 minutes. Swamp Thing, 1982. Wes Craven's superhero movie about a then relatively obscure superhero has scientist Alec Holland, who's working on a formula that will allow plants to grow and thrive in inhospitable environments, transforming himself into a half-man, half-plant hybrid-like creature known as the Swamp Thing. In other words, Alec Holland becomes the subject of his own creation after laboratory sabotage is carried out by the evil paramilitary leader Anton Arcane. What follows next is a hell of a ride that die-hard fans get to indulge in. Craven's superhero horror begins just like a horror flick, given its bizarre occurrences around the secluded murky marshland area, excellent swamp photography, and moody atmosphere. The film becomes even more enjoyable with its fast but consistent pacing, self-deprecating humor, and a solid cast. The eponymous character Swamp Thing is also one of the movie's high points. He's pretty intimidating, especially when he regrows his arm right after it's chopped off. Plenty of grotesque body horror is featured in the film. Add to this intense action and a memorable climactic battle between a transformed Arcane and Swamp Thing. This enormously enjoyable movie is taken notches higher thanks to Robbie Greenberg's cinematography and Harry Manfredini's rousing background score. The Trial of the Incredible Hulk, 1989. Based on the TV series The Incredible Hulk, which aired from 1978 to 82, Kenneth Johnson's television superhero film has Dr. David Banner moving to a large city to find a way to stop his transformation into the monstrous Hulk. However, Banner ends up being held as a witness to a violent crime connected to the powerful underworld crime boss, Wilson Fisk. This has Banner eventually teaming up with Matt Murdock, or in other words, the mysterious crime fighter Daredevil, to defeat the Kingpin. This television film is often addressed as a backdoor television pilot for the Daredevil series, which wasn't produced then. This is why the focus seems to be more on Murdock and his alter ego Daredevil than Banner and the Hulk. The Trial of the Incredible Hulk is a reasonably enjoyable TV film not only for fans of the Hulk and Daredevil, but for anyone. This one particular courtroom scene has Banner transforming into the Hulk in front of everyone. This is undoubtedly one of the movie's high points. The film not only has a fantastic cast, but also a very well-written teleplay. The late Bill Bixby deserves special mention for portraying the strained David Banner to perfection. Add to this Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk, Rex Smith as Murdock and Daredevil, and John Rhys Davies, Gimli from Lord of the Rings, as the cool and calculated Wilson Fisk. The action sequences and the effects on display are pretty much standard television fare for back then, making this movie pretty deserving of your time. Superman 3, 1983. Also directed by Richard Lester and backed by a screenplay by David and Leslie Newman, the events of Superman 3 has the CEO of a Metropolis-based conglomerate forcing a computer programmer to fabricate kryptonite and make it strong enough to weaken the Man of Steel. However, the new form of kryptonite makes Superman selfish instead of making him weak and leads him to commit petty acts of vandalism, such as blowing out the Olympic flame and straightening the Leaning Tower of Pisa. After Superman ends up causing an oil spill, it has him undergoing a complete personality change, and the question remains if he'll be able to regain his sanity. How does the thought of Superman being drunk sound? Kinda weird, right? Well, how about Superman sleeping with random women? Are you wondering what's happening and, most importantly, why it's happening? Well, blame the new kryptonite that has tar and nicotine as its secret ingredients. Is this trying to send some kind of message? We don't know anything about that, but what we do know is that no matter what Lester and the Newmans tried to do, the third installment in the Superman film franchise came nowhere close to the original two. But having said that, Superman 3 also happens to be a movie that's highly underrated. The superhero flick has plenty of things that take the film to the next level. The battle that Superman has with his good and evil selves in the junkyard certainly deserves mention. Richard Pryor as Gus Gorman, the computer genius, did a solid job beside Christopher Reeve as Superman and the late Robert Vaughn as the villainous super wealthy industrialist. Indeed, the third edition isn't as epic as the first two, but it's enjoyable and a lot more relatable if you watch it with an open mind.
This place up. How am I supposed to run a class? Ah! Yes,
Howard the Duck, 1986. Willard Hughes' superhero comedy movie, based on the Marvel Comics character of the same name, has an anthropomorphic, cigar-smoking, highly sarcastic duck named Howard pulled from his homeworld to Earth. Upon finding himself stranded on an alien planet, Howard soon realizes that he's humanity's only hope and goes to extreme lengths to stop an alien invasion. Believe us when we tell you that Howard the Duck was initially intended to be an animated movie, but because of contractual obligations, the movie became a live-action release instead. We don't know what's up with the movie's poor reputation, but given the time when it was released, Richard Klein's slick cinematography, John Barry's dynamic musical score, and the flashy special effects are all up to par. This movie's not meant to be taken seriously. Take a look at the film's title. It's about a duck. Are you really expecting a duck to deliver an Oscar-worthy performance? But what you can expect is for the duck to perform quack fu for you, which is its unique style of martial arts, and may we add, he's pretty good at it. If you haven't watched this movie and you're looking for a good time, give it a definite watch and thank us later. Supergirl, 1984. Jenno Swark's Supergirl not only happens to be the fourth film in the Superman film series, but its events take place right after what happened in Superman 3, thereby also serving as a spin-off of the Christopher Reeve franchise. The narrative has Kara Zor-El, Superman's cousin, pursuing a unique and immensely powerful item known as the Omegahedron to Earth in order to retrieve it, only to find herself up against a power-hungry, mean-spirited witch, and she'll achieve Supergirl status in the process. Based on the DC Comics character by Otto Binder and Al Plastino, Supergirl has Helen Slater portraying the titular character. She's pretty believable as the Man of Steel's cousin. Faye Dunaway also has to be given special mention for her excellent portrayal of the Wicked Witch. From the beginning, Swark wanted Supergirl to stand on its own, which is precisely why he had the screenwriter David Odell revise the screenplay repeatedly until he found something as per his taste. Add to this Jerry Goldsmith's sensational background score and Alan Hume's spectacular cinematography, which worked wonders in favor of the film. Also, the key to enjoying Supergirl is not taking the movie seriously, and if you can do that, you might be able to enjoy it a little bit.
A job for Condor Man!
Condor Man, 1981. This adventure spy comedy superhero movie by Charles Jarrott revolves around an imaginative, eccentric comic book writer and illustrator's attempt to assist in the defection of a female Soviet KGB agent, thereby getting the chance to bring his own comic creation, Condor Man, to life. Written by Mark Sturtevant, Condor Man is often regarded as the ultimate action adventure back in the 80s. It's got the coolest gadgets, the best car and boat chase sequences, and creepy Russian villains, worldwide locations, and a sexy femme fatale. What's not to love? If you're looking for a fast-paced, highly entertaining adventure movie, you're looking in the right direction. Also, brownie points to you if you happen to be a fan of Michael Crawford and have a thing for cars. Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, 1987. Directed by Sidney J. Furie and written by Lawrence Connor and Mark Rosenthal, the fourth and final Christopher Reeve Superman film happens to be a sequel to Superman 3. The storyline has the world on the brink of nuclear war and Lex Luthor creating a solar-powered superhuman, or in other words, Nuclear Man, to take down Superman. The USP of Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, is Christopher Reeves, who, goes without saying, was the absolute best in the movie. The flick is fun, it's fast-paced, and the whole idea of getting rid of nuclear weapons was done very nicely. Along with the cast that deserves special mention, including Mark Pello as Nuclear Man, by the way, the musical score by John Williams and Alexander Courage is also highly effective, working in favor of the film. Marvelous verdict. Well, that's all for today, and with this, we finally come to the end of our video. So which of these 80s superhero movies left a lasting impression on you? Did we miss one of your favorites, or is there one you want to give a special shout out? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and we sincerely hope you enjoyed this 80s time capsule. And if you did enjoy this video, you know what to do. Leave a thumbs up and stay tuned with us as we promise to come back with more exciting content. Until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, be safe out there, and thanks for watching.